Hello and welcome to the 67th episode of In Our Defense. Hi Abhishek.
Hi Dev, how are you doing?
All well. How's your work week been like?
How's your work week? You can
Mix
tell
actually.
us.
Certain days are very busy, others are like okayish. Nothing, no news story that's really been keeping us very caught up. But छोटा मोटा यहाँ पे ये होता रहता है. Monsoon actually in North India, large parts of North India wreaking havoc. That's one thing that's
The
been
weekend
very
was,
busy.
there was heavy rain.
Yes, very
at least
heavy.
in Delhi.
It is in Delhi, yeah. So,
Scary visuals coming in from several parts of North
yeah,
India. isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah. So that's that, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it actually. What about you?
I mean, same, yeah. I'm just going through the grind. Nothing spectacular.
Right. Cool. This week we'll talk about one of my favorite aspects of military, it's naval aviation. I think we've said this before. I've at least said this before about my fascination with naval aviation, and I think part of it honestly has to do with the Tom Cruise Top Gun movies. Immensely popular. I think even with your generation.
Of course.
As with mine, and so that's one of the reasons. But apart from that, like I've previously said, we've always seen aircraft carriers as these behemoth. The term that's often used in media is city on in the sea,
Floating
basically.
city,
floating
air
city,
base,
everything. Yeah, just because of sheer size, and you've been on a couple of them. I'm guessing at least Indian. So I'm guessing you've been on all.
I've
The one
been
that
on
we have right now.
I've not been on Vikramaditya, I've been on Vikrant.
Acha, okay.
And I've been on a French aircraft carrier.
Yes, very
Charles de
recently.
Gaulle,
Very recently, yeah. And we had spoken about this, what we are about to discuss today as well, back then when you were on the French aircraft carrier, and it had something to do with what we want to discuss. Another landmark defense deal that's about to be signed.
First rejoinder.
Yes.
There's nothing official, but
there is
it's all
nothing
over the
official,
place
yeah,
that an announcement is likely
To be made, yeah.
about finally India going in for 26 Rafale M, the Maritime
the naval
version,
variant
the naval
of
version
the Rafale fighter jet.
of Dassault Aviation's fighter jet. So despite all the controversy regarding the earlier procurement for the Indian Air Force, where 36 were bought, and there was a bit of a political hangama over it. Also, very strong messaging by the government, isn't it? And it's the format is going to be similar if it happens. It's a government to government deal. But yeah, so we've given the rejoinder first that we are expecting this to be sort of announced. Because a lot of people have already started asking me questions, even in the newsroom. So what is the cost price going to be and things like that. Comparison with the previous purchase that we did for the Air Force. So first things first, the deal hasn't happened.
Yes.
You will only know the cost when there's a contract. Even if it's announced, it's not necessary that the deal will take place immediately.
Yes.
So that's when the negotiations will start, etc. Something very similar to the Predator drone deal that we discussed, I think, last week or was it before?
Yeah.
So a similar kind of a situation. So I think we should just hold on to get more information, and the information will only come when there is a deal.
Yes.
Right now, what we are expecting is, for all you know, this is announced by the time we publish our podcast.
Yeah.
For all you know, the announcement is made. At the most, an announcement will be made. We still might not know the nitty-gritties of cost and India-specific enhancements and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting that this was long-awaited. Super Hornet or a Rafale M. Enough indications now that the government is going with the Dassault.
Yeah.
And not just this, there are some other deals that are likely to go through. Another one is 3 more Scorpene class submarines. With the MDL, Mazgaon Dock Limited. So 6 have already been manufactured. So it would be interesting that if India goes for 3 more, and in this partnership with France, and MDL gets the contract for that as well. And of course, another big deal which is being talked about, again, no announcements yet, is the Safran engine.
Yes.
So you've had a joint venture already discussed as far as GE engine is concerned.
From the US,
From the US, and now the Safran. Let's see whether it's a joint venture, TOT, transfer of technology. Exciting days ahead when it comes to defense acquisitions.
Yeah, exactly. And this is expected, all of these deals expected to be signed, or some sort of an understanding to be reached during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to France later this month. So I think right now, if we were to talk about the timeline, this episode is at the juncture of where we were before PM's visit to the US, where we had said that there was enough talk about the Predator-owning deal signed, but we didn't really have know about the specifics. And even after the visit, we don't know the exact parameters of what's going. Just know that this is like a sort of an understanding. This is India will purchase these drones. For how much, with what capabilities, that's not something.
No, that will only be that will be in public domain once the contract is done.
Yeah. So I think something similar probably might happen with the
yes,
Rafale
I reckon
variant,
it will be.
But even that's something we, by the way, don't know, like Abhishek is saying, because there's no formal announcement yet. But we'll still talk about it because it's
other than the acquisitions, something that's caught my attention is is it 3 or 4 Rafales that are going to be part of the Bastille Day parade?
Yes. 4, I think.
4, yeah. There's a tri-service contingent of the Indian forces. Lovely visuals of them, carrying out rehearsals in Paris to the tune of Sare Jahan Se Acha. Really interesting.
Yeah.
So, military soft power, you want to call it, or whatever. I really like those visuals when we saw, and there was a tri-service contingent there. So I think that's going to be a big highlight as well.
Yeah, that is.
The Rafales flying
by,
over the skies of Paris. If the new naval Rafales have to come, tri-service contingent, good military diplomacy at display probably.
Yeah. Right. Right. So let's get into it. With almost every defense deal that happens of late, you have words like landmark, major, big boost, etc., etc., etc. So every deal obviously every acquisition cannot obviously be at the same level of a big boost. How would you rate, if this deal goes through for the naval Rafales, how important do you rate it in the current scheme of things for India?
You see, the remarkable, big boost, landmark, these are just adjectives just to amplify the story, I think, without getting into the merits of the usage. I think context is important. You need new fighter aircraft for the Navy. That's a given. The MiG-29Ks that you have are aging. You want to replace your fleet. With so many defense deals, things were stuck. You finally managed to sort of zero in on 2, and which is the Super Hornet and Rafale. And then it seems that you have made up your mind and you're going ahead with the Rafale. Whereas, the original demand of the Navy was to get almost 60, 57, 58 fighters for the aircraft carriers. So that has come down to 26. It's come down to 26 because of cost constraints. So that's why I said context is important. And it's quite similar to what happened with the Air Force. Your requirement was for 100 plus 114. You settled for 36. Because something is better than nothing. And you changed status quo and went in for a government-to-government deal, which it seems is becoming the norm slowly. So these government-to-government deals might not be for a big acquisition in terms of numbers. So you might not have a government deal for 56 aircraft, but for 26. Similarly, not for 100, but 36. So maybe you're trying to ensure that you get something.
Before you go
Change
on,
that status quo.
Before you go on, just like, for our listeners and viewers, just break it down. What's a government to government deal and how is it different from a conventional deal? Like what's
So there's no bidding to let's
okay.
break it down simply.
Right. So the government decides this is what you want and
Yeah,
we're
so
going
two
for it.
governments get together and they negotiate.
Right.
So those were the questions that were asked, probing questions that how come this was done, who's benefiting out of this, that. But in a government to government deal, it's very difficult to sort of establish if there is a middle player at all.
Okay.
Unless you really catch somebody red-handed,
Red-handed, yeah.
isn't it? So the paperwork, I think, is difficult to establish because you are saying these are our specifications. You're speaking to the government. And the government is facilitating the deal with the respective company. So that's the big difference. So I mean that's a big change after the Air Force bought Rafales, because there was a need felt that becoming slaves to procedure is sort of really creating bottlenecks. And even now the Air Force needs more fighter aircraft. So you can still that, by the way, that original requirement
Is
still stands. Yeah. The Air Force is not saying that it's been taken care of. Now there was
some request for whatever
RFI request for
information issued
so,
very recently.
No, it's an old one. It's an old one that is that is still pending, and that is in addition to what you're doing with your Tejas, etc., and all those things.
Right.
So the Air Force is very clear about it that their demand, despite what is happening with the Tejas program or the AMCA program, still stands. That's the underlining factor. As far as Navy is concerned, of course, you don't need so many. The numbers are much less, and they are settling down for 26 as against the requirement of 56. The reason again there is that you are looking for an indigenous deck-based fighter
as well. Yeah.
for the Navy. And the leadership is quite confident that by 26, 27, you will have the first prototype ready and things like that. And things are on the right track. So if you get 26 right now, again, they will not come
together.
And so the entire delivery might take, say, 3 years. So I think that's the calculation that's been done. So if you sign the deal now, delivery start by 26, that's when your indigenous deck-based fighter sort of comes into the picture, is the trials start, prototype is ready. Over the next 4-5 years, you have them ready. So that's the blueprint. But if you have 2 aircraft carriers, you would want your fighter jets to be new as well.
Yeah.
MiG-29 is good. It's fine because unfortunately LCA Navy is out of question as far as
Even
operations
though it
are
keeps
concerned.
making landings and takeoffs on the
Yes, yeah. So it's just to showcase probably that it's something that we have. But that's a bit of a contradiction. I don't know.
Yeah, I always felt weird about that because the initial few weeks after Vikrant was out in the
Yeah, I mean, what are you
seas.
testing? Are you testing
Why?
the LCA Navy, or are you testing Vikrant?
Yeah. Maybe they were testing Vikrant.
Yeah, I think those were it's part of sea trials.
Yeah,
so,
maybe perhaps. Maybe that. And just to help our listeners and viewers with some more context, when we think of a fighter jet shortfalls, no one ever thinks of Indian Navy. At least no one who's not like you and me, who closely follows the world of defense. Because you look at it very simply from a normal layman's perspective. Indian Air Force keeps saying that our official sanctioned strength is 42 squadrons, and we are at about 30 right now. And this is after the Rafale came in. Rafale came in. Before that, it was 28. This is when it used to make major headlines. IF is major down. Of which a majority of them are old Russian MiGs. Many of them, unfortunately, face accidents, crashes. MiG-21s, that have seen pilots lose their lives, which has led to media coining phrases that you personally do not like, flying coffins and stuff like that. But we don't want to go there. The point being...
Widowmakers.
Widowmakers, yeah.
It's the worst one in today's context because there are women fighter pilots as well.
Exactly, yeah, right. The point being that the Air Force lacks the required number of fighter jets it needs to fight whatever it thinks it needs to fight in a situation where you have Pakistan in the west and China on the east is pretty clear. Navy का सोचता नहीं है because first of all, even if you think about it, Navy fighter jets aren't really involved in that many accidents. I can't recall a one, for example, in recent memory. I mean the deck-based ones, the offshore ones which take off from the shore areas. They have obviously seen some accidents, and the helicopters. Yeah. The aircraft carriers you have two aircraft carriers. One was launched recently with much fanfare, INS Vikrant. Their strength is around 36 capacity, not strength. Capacity is to support around 35, 36 aircraft on the decks. So that's both
including
fighter jets, including helicopters. And you have, I think, around 40 plus MiG-29Ks with the Navy. How old are these aircraft?
So, I think India, the first induction was in 2010, but they are easily 4 decades old.
In terms of when they were developed.
Almost, Russian, I think it was in late 80s that they were sort of
designed and manufactured,
came into service, if one can say. So India has also bought them pretty late.
Yeah.
So
I don't know why. Maybe it was again, cost factors back then. Perhaps we don't know. Can't recall. Research करना पड़ेगा थोड़ा उसका. But the point being, so explain to our listeners and viewers the pressing need for the Navy for new fighter jets. Because, like I said, if you just put these facts and figures to a normal person, they'll be like, हाँ के पुराना मॉडल चल रहा है तुम्हारे पास बट ठीक है चल रहा है 2 एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर है काफ़ी है तुम्हारे पास उसके लिए क्या जरूरत है इतना प्रेसिंग क्या है इसमें मतलब
नहीं see if you look at it that 40 is a decent number for 2 isn't it you have some in repairs some in some kind of maintenance and still you have for either of the aircraft carriers you will have a decent number at least a dozen odd ready for operations. But the fact is that, the fact that they are old and your aircraft carrier is new, I think is the most simplest explanation one can give. And also, what is the vision that you have for your maritime security? That's, again, I think, big context. We've mentioned before that there has been a big thrust on Navy's budget in the last 2-3 years. If you just go through the budget papers of the Ministry of Defense, one will actually realize that a huge amount is being allocated for capital procurement. Capital procurement, for me, that's what the budget really is.
Yes.
The other heads like revenue go for salaries etc. and those kind of things. So capital is what is meant for modernization.
Yeah.
So if you're allocating a big chunk on capital procurement for capital procurement, there certainly is a clear indication that there is a big need to overhaul and spike up your maritime power. So if those allocations have been made, that means there is a clear blueprint in mind of your leadership on where to go with your Navy. And the big debate whether we need the third aircraft carrier, as far as the Navy is concerned, they still maintain that we need the third aircraft carrier. So if you need another aircraft carrier, you will need fighters as well.
For that as well.
So I think there's no way that the Navy is going to hold back the demands. And of course, you can demand the moon. That's a different thing. But yeah, there has to be some practicalities, realistic targets that one has in mind. Also with the squadron strength that we always hear about. I don't remember the last time the Indian Air Force had 42 squadrons.
Good point.
So I think some introspection needs to be done there. That is it just a number written somewhere in papers?
Yeah. Actually, it's a fantastic point because, it's probably just a number written in papers. He sanctioned strength is 42.
Is this. So, maybe you need to tweak that as well.
Yeah.
Keeping your current capabilities. The sanctioned strength was 42, probably at a time when fighter aircraft was your only and only source
The mainstay,
of air power.
I think this was probably done before the age of drones. I'm definitely sure about that.
Much before the age of
Exactly.
drones. I'm not even sure what was the level of your other surface-to-air
Missiles, yeah.
which can take down fighter aircraft, your air defense guns. So there are other areas where capabilities come in as well. So that if you keep that in mind and if you leverage that, then perhaps 42 is a number that can be tweaked.
Yeah. That's actually a good point.
Air Force will not like what I'm saying. But I'm saying, is it just a number because it's there?
Yeah.
Or is it something really sacrosanct?
Yeah. I think actually that's something we should talk about. And, a side note to our producer, and I'll ask her to keep a note because this will make for a good headline of our podcast at least. Does the IAF really need 42 squadrons? And but I'll let our viewers and
But we're discussing Navy today. So.
Yeah. So we won't spend time on this. So we'll let our viewers and listeners come on this. Do let us know if you think we should discuss this. In the comments below, just say what you think of this idea. Do you want Abhishek and I to talk about this? Or if you're not on YouTube, you can drop a text to us at 8588966996, or just email us pods@indiaradar.com. That's pods@indiaradar.com. Let us know what you think. If you wanted to discuss based on that, we'll think of that. And also, we'll just be back after a quick break.
And then you have India, where, all governance matters are subject to domestic political compulsions. Semiconductor manufacturing can never, ever be 100% localized. But our government might just be like, yes, that there will be no imports from China for the materials that are needed for chip manufacturing because it suits the political narrative. For totalitarian societies such as China, it's their strength. Do you really see India bucking this trend and, getting a semiconductor fab plant in place?
India is a very late mover in the chip industry, but it's a critical one and it was needed. So better late than never. But there are two areas where India has moved on the chip industry. One was with Foxconn and Vedanta. The other one is Micron. This was during Prime Minister's visit that Micron would be coming to India. But then again, like I said, French shoring also comes always not with a lot of benefits.
Yeah.
You see? Over here, Foxconn's pullout from India has taken a toll on the whole idea of India becoming the alternative. Now, in the supply chain industry, to counter China, the country that everybody's propping up and looking at and talking about is India, that, India will be the alternative to China in the global supply chain. But we are yet to make those inroads into manufacturing and industry. So while we're talking about 5,000 jobs, 15,000 indirect jobs, so on and so forth, ramping up capacity gradually and making the whole thing operational by 2024 would require massive investments from India. Are we going to be the alternative tomorrow? Not really. With Foxconn pulling out, certainly not tomorrow, not even day after. But somewhere down the line, India is going to be a player in this industry.
Welcome back. Abhishek and I are discussing. This time I won't say I use the word upcoming because it's still we don't know the specifics yet. It's just there's a strong speculation and I think strong buzz that India's going
indications.
Go ahead and buy another set of Rafale jets. This is time for the Indian Navy and not for the Air Force. Off the shelf, again, we don't know, but probably off the shelf. All of them, I guess.
I mean, if it happens, it will be...
26 is too less a number for to be transfer technology, I guess. So, yeah. So, Abhishek, before the break, you were explaining...
If we manage to sort of bargain and get some transfer of technology in this, it'll be a coup, I think.
Yeah, I was actually just going to come to that because...
Because the reason why you went for a government-to-government deal with Dassault Aviation, with France earlier for Air Force, because there were sticking points when it came to transfer of technology.
Yes. It was just taking too long for the
So that's the reason. So if you manage to do that now, you would have struck a hard bargain. Really hard bargain.
Yeah. And I was just gonna come to that. I mean, so just before the break, you were talking about, and not just before, but towards the beginning of this episode, you were talking about how all of this has to be seen in the context of India's own project to develop a fighter jet for its aircraft carriers. The first one that was developed, the prototype, you've said is just out. There's no way the Navy wants that because
Unfortunately, I mean, they showcase it.
yeah, they keep doing that. I mean,
It's
like
good.
I said,
It's good to be seen, but
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So the Navy, because I think they want a twin engine version and not the one that's there, which is a single engine version. Anyways, so that's under development. Abhishek, you said by 2026, 27, Caspas, we might have the first prototype ready, etc. So this is what I said, what I meant. So if there's some transfer of technology, let me just put it this way. How difficult is it to develop a fighter jet for naval purposes compared to something for land, and where do you practically see India's project at based on what you've read, what you've heard, what you've talked about in the whole setup of the military?
again, the India's indigenous fighter program is again easily 4 decades old. So it's certainly not been a smooth ride. The fact that you had Tejas only now a few years back, and I mean, it's still we're still looking for the numbers that we are. But yeah, it's been decided that Tejas will form, if not the backbone, it will at least hold some significance
In the Air Force.
Indian Air Force's scheme of things. That's the way about that has been decided. The program of India's own 5th generation aircraft, AMCA, again, is something that the defense planners are really excited about. And they feel that things are on the right path. I don't think the problem lies with capability so much. It's about meeting deadlines.
Okay.
I would like to believe that we have the capability to do all of this. And even though that, we say that LCA Tejas is just a sort of a showstopper on an aircraft carrier, but it was still one step taken. If that were not done, you would not probably move on to the next stage of saying, okay, we'll have a deck-based full-fledged fighter as the one that you are thinking of. So yeah, it's been long. It's been it's not been an easy journey as far as India's fighter program is concerned. But yeah, there are few options because I think cost is something that comes in the way far too many times. So there has to be a blend. You need to have your own stuff, and at the same time, probably that's what will put pressure on your local industry, indigenous industry as well. Because if you completely say we are not going to buy stuff from outside, only on them, then where's the pressure? Where's the competition? So I think we are in a stage where the indigenous industry is sort of feeling that, okay, we can compete. Earlier, that was not happening. And forget about fighter jets. Those are big platforms. There's so many other things. Drones, for example. There's a big indigenous drone program that is already taking place. So yeah, I mean, it's a big churn that we've discussed before as well. And this is something that I think we'll keep making reference to because when you discuss defense in India, whether you like it or not, self-reliance, Atmanirbharta, they have become buzzwords.
Yes, yeah.
Not to say that these things were not happening before, but yeah, there's something that Prime Minister Modi has done that he's made people conscious about.
Yeah.
Extremely conscious about. And not just people sitting in South Block, even civilians.
Yeah.
And I feel there's nothing wrong with that in a sense that if civilians are aware that this is a big priority for the government, then obviously they would want to read more about it. They would want to hear more about it. And that also sort of adds, I wouldn't want to use the word pressure, expectations from the indigenous industry.
Because you mentioned this, something just came to my mind, and I've been meaning to ask you about this. Just a few months ago, I was reading an article by, I forgot whom. It was a definitely retired officer, a top-ranking officer. I forget which branch, either the army or the navy. But he was writing on the topic of acquisitions and how the military historically has seen Indian-made products for the military, and he used a sentence on the lines of that the military has always seen foreign equipment as like a Ferrari and Indian equipment as like a Maruti.
Yeah, that was the
that
mindset.
has
That was the
hurt. Would you
mindset,
agree there was a mindset like that?
Probably yes.
And
if you're saying that the piece that you read was by a veteran,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean he was speaking for himself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that mindset was there, and you needed somebody to sort of drill into your heads and change that mindset. And I'm being very candid about
So
it.
that's what I'm asking. Has that changed?
Maybe not completely, but yeah, that it's been forced into you. Not to say that you compromise on quality. Nobody's saying that.
Of course, yeah.
But you can't have a prejudice as well, isn't it? And see, it's again, as a civilian, let's forget about military. We might be military observers, but we are at the end of the day civilians. Being on board Vikrant, as a citizen of this country, I felt good. It was a big deal. And I think it's natural. Any civilian who would, go there and get a chance to be on Vikrant and be told that, this is what we made on our own, and there are only 4 or 5 countries in the world who have the capability to make aircraft carriers. That's what you look up to. I mean, that your country is doing well. These are indications that we've done something right. Don't need to be. I mean, I'm not being overtly nationalistic or anything. This is just a basic sense of sort of security and a sense of achievement. That I am a taxpayer. My country is capable of doing this.
Yeah.
If I see tomorrow any military platform being exported, not just is it a matter of pride, it's adding to your economy. I mean, it'll be a big thing. So it's only in our interest for the indigenous, why just defense industry? I mean, isn't that the mantra for all business, that you make sure that your exports go up? So why not in defense? That's the big question.
Yeah, right. Couple of last points on this topic. One about Rafale, the naval variant, and its competitor, Super Hornet F-18, FA-18. Sorry. So you said at the beginning there was, with the government-to-government purchase, there's no bidding involved, so there's no competition per se. But obviously we know, because we've been tracking this for a while, that the Navy was considering both.
Yeah.
Testing had been, not testing per se hadn't done, but
trials were done. Yeah.
Trials were done. We had visuals of
INS
them.
Hansa,
Yeah,
which is
the
Navy's offshore facility.
landing facility, yeah.
Which just represents, it's a sort of a replica of a
Aircraft
carrier.
deck, yeah, exactly. Carrier deck, exactly. And if I'm not wrong, the FA-18 was designed keeping American aircraft carrier in mind, which more or less are catapult, where basically something shoots the aircraft off the deck. While
So
Indian carriers...
Catobar and Stobar, both of our aircraft carriers are Stobar. But I don't think that could be the only reason. If that were the reason, that FA-18 is not good enough for Stobar and it's only good for Catobar, then why would you test it?
Yeah. Anyway, that was on my point. My point was, so yeah, the Navy has been testing it, and obviously they would have had a say in which aircraft to go for. But do you also think, because this is where it's a bit confusing for a lot of people by then. I realized this when I was talking to somebody on my team itself, that people don't generally understand the difference between a fighter jet used by an Air Force and the one used by a Navy. So, you've explained this previously of how the designs are a bit different, because you need the ability to take off at high speeds from a shorter distance, land very hard on the deck, and be able to absorb that impact and
It certainly needs to be more robust.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the least that we can explain.
Exactly. And it's, I think, a bit smaller as well, because obviously space
And
constraints
also
on an aircraft
because,
carrier.
as you said, the aircraft, the runway is much shorter.
Short, yeah.
It's obviously
Yeah.
more challenging, but something that really caught my eye when I saw landings on Vikrant. Every landing that took place, be it LCA, Navy, or MiG-29K, every landing, every pilot. So there are 3 hooks.
to catch the planes
Yeah.
when they're landing. Yeah.
So if you don't get the first one, the second one, then the third one. If you don't get the third one, you probably go into the seas. Every landing that took place, the
First
first
one.
So the precision
Yeah.
with which they are working and the amount of skill. When again, we are not pilots, we don't understand the technicalities. But as a layman, as a civilian, again, the precision is something that struck
Yeah.
me.
Which is why I said at the beginning of the episode that naval aviation is something
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
very...
every landing,
Yeah.
not one went on to the second one. So, I mean, these are very small things. I don't know if it would be... if people would observe all this something, but maybe I would have missed it
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Because somebody told me that look out for this. They will get it right
The first
on the first one.
Yeah.
And I noticed that.
Yeah. Yeah. But we digressed a little. But
No,
so-
these are not
yeah.
digressions. These are very much part of our stories.
Of course, yeah.
We are not taking a class
Exactly.
on
yeah.
Navy.
Yeah. We're talking about. Yeah. So what I was getting to was, but even then, the fact that both the fighter jets, whether it's the Rafale naval variant, Rafale M, or the one that the Indian Air Force has, will basically be of the same base model. Would that also have been
spare parts
the
and
spare
things like
parts?
that
Exactly.
would be
That's what I'm
similar.
getting at. Would that have been a big factor in deciding which aircraft to go for?
Again, this is being talked about, so I know where you're coming from. I have a little slightly different take on it.
Okay.
Again, what I talked when you mentioned Stobar and Catobar. If this is the big factor in choosing Rafale, then why go in for a trial of an FA-18, of the Super Hornet? If this is the only criteria. If amongst 10 criterias, this is at 8 or 9, I would say fine. So, I'm under pressure to actually get a story on why we have chosen Rafale over FA-18. And in fact, in the news meeting we were discussing, and I said that, we can get into analysis. I can do, somebody else can do, we can get veterans to write. But the story would be to get an Indian Navy report which says why this and why not.
This.
So if we get that, either me or somebody else in our network, Manjeet Negi, he has his contacts, sources right, I think that would be the story.
Yeah, because the
So-
reason I'm asking is
Yeah,
because
otherwise it's Havabazi.
Havabazi, but the reason I ask is something that we've discussed several times on this podcast is that cost is a big concern.
Cost could be a concern,
So obviously, think of it this way: you're going for a repeat purchase with the same company. Obviously, you could
Cost
negotiate
could,
for a bigger
there
discount
are
this
many
time, right?
things in the air. Cost could be a concern. Geopolitics could be a concern. You need to sort of manage both
Yeah.
France, US. So you've just done a big deal with the US. So geopolitics could be one. But again, it's very difficult to say this is that one reason why they have gone for this. And these are technical things. And the Navy was like, both are fine, both are good enough for us. So maybe there's a government intervention. Not so much a technical naval intervention, but a government intervention. That's where geopolitics, cost, etc. comes in. Diplomacy. So it's difficult. Yeah, we can talk about it and we can sort of speculate. Fine, I mean, those could be the reasons. But I don't know if the Navy internal report actually says that these are the 10 reasons why
We'd
Rafale
prefer
is better
Then
vis-a-vis Super Hornet.
FA Super Hornet, yeah. One last point on which to end this, and this is a bit technical, but I think very important. So earlier you were talking about capital procurement being set aside for the Navy. I remember a previous episode where you had talked about that how, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that how the outlay for a current financial year is not always to buy new stuff, but to also cover for purchases that have already been made earlier,
Yeah.
as in the deals were signed
Committed
earlier.
liabilities.
But perhaps the payment is being made now because of how the deal has been structured.
Yeah.
So what that tells me is, and this is where the larger picture and the importance of the Navy, because we've discussed over several episodes now that we've seen Navy taking a bit of prominence when it comes to deals and when it comes to so when it's submarines, even with the Predator drone, the bifurcation that we
Chunk
have
that Navy is getting is
much
more.
higher. Yes, Navy is getting 15, while Air Force and Army are going to get 8 each. So we have Navy taking precedence over there as well. A new set of fighter jets being purchased for the Navy.
A new aircraft
a
carrier
new is being envisioned. Yeah, Navy wants one.
One has already come.
One has already
there is
come.
Debate
Exactly.
whether there should be another
one.
third
Yeah. So
submarines.
Submarines. Yeah. 3 of them again. The deal likely to be signed during PM's visit to France. So this intent and this support that's you are seeing in the last 2-3 years, and the reason for that is China. Do you think that will continue? Because all of this will take time and you'll need to constantly keep paying for it. It's not as though abhi kharcha kar diya and you're set for it, right?
Oh, I mean, see, as you rightly pointed out, that this has been the pattern over the last few years, and it's obviously keeping in mind your larger security concerns. China angle is definitely a big factor because of why you are sort of trying to enhance your naval capabilities. And yes, I don't think it's a half-hearted measure. If all this is happening, there has to be some reasoning and thrust behind it. And the good thing is that the Navy is getting their way. And it did require one of the recent Navy chiefs to publicly say that for so many years our budget allocation has been pretty low. It was Admiral Lamba who said that.
Yes.
And the next budget that came, it was a boom.
Yeah.
So to make a public statement was a big statement, and he was telling the government that, if you want all this to be done, and this was in a press conference where some questions were asked about these kind of things, why are they stuck, there's that. So he was very candid. He said, just go back and look at
the budget that's been given to us. What do you expect?
So there has been a big change after that.
Interesting. And we'll keep tracking these changes, especially when it comes to the Indian Navy. We've been doing it for the last few episodes now. Not last few per se, but whenever we've talked about Navy, this has come up. Right. One last point to end this on. Question. Fun question, again, based on my interaction with people in my team. Like I said, the differences between an Air Force fighters and naval. I know for a fact that naval fighters have and can be used in land operations. They recently were. During the China were used this. But can an Air Force jet ever land on an aircraft carrier?
Really, very tough. Yeah.
Very tough. Can you recall of an incident where it was tried?
And I'm not, also the Air Force pilot.
Their training perhaps is not there. Yeah.
So that's a bit of a difference.
Once again, I think Air Force pilots might not like this, but once again, the reason I love naval aviation. It's just sexier, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it has more glamour.
Yeah. Well, that's it, I think.
And Top Gun has added to it.
Of course, as always. Well, that's it, I think. Thanks, Abhishek. Fun chat, as always. And thanks to our listeners and viewers once again. Just let us know again what you thought of this episode. You can drop a text to us at 8588966996 or an email to us at pods@indiatoday.com. That's pods@indiatoday.com. And also a special thanks as always to our producer Anna Priyadarshini. That's it for this week's Defense Dose. For more, tune in next week. Till then, stay safe and do not cross any boundaries without a passport. Bye-bye.